regardless of what team Jesse Marsch selected in this game, they should have won convincingly. They should have won convincingly.
This is the Park the Bus podcast with Stephen Caldwell and Kevin Kilbane.
So, Kevin, lots to talk about this week. Pochettino rumoured to have interviewed for the Brentford job, the US head coach. We've also got the Club World Cup, success or failure. A lot of people have got comments on that, but there's only really one place to start. Disastrous result for Canada in Minneapolis in the Gold Cup quarter-final.
I think sometimes, you know, when we're doing TV and we're in the middle of the game, you start to use words like disaster and all these sort of things. And sometimes you can feel like they're overstated. But with this, it doesn't feel that way. You know, Guatemala are what? Or were the 106th ranked team in the world. Canada's trajectory over the last few years, not just under Jesse Marsch, has been one way, hasn't it? Especially under Jesse Marsch, certainly in the last year, the way that Canada have been. We've consistently spoke about this roster, and we'll go back to your show that again, but it's true, isn't it? We spoke about the depth of Jesse Marsch's squad, the 11 that Jesse Marsch has got at his disposal. Outside that, 3 or 4 others. Regardless of what team Jesse Marsch selected in this game, they should have won convincingly. They should have won convincingly. And it was said to me, and it's something that was quite striking after the game, even the first half, the game was probably the most entertaining game of the tournament that I've seen from Canada's perspective. Obviously, the 6-0 win against Honduras was a totally dominant display. Curacao was very poor, I thought. El Salvador was very poor. They went down to 9 men in the game. This was quite a competitive game, and it shouldn't have been a competitive game. Yeah. Given Guatemala's standings in the world, and given where Canada are and the talent that they've got outside, Stefan Estacio and Alphonso Davies, Moise Bombito, and these players that were missing, outside those players, Canada had more than enough and should have had more than enough to dominate this game. And we'll go back to Shaffelberg in a little while. We'll talk about that and what happened, Stevie. But ultimately, it was a dreadful performance. I have to say that. Just didn't do enough really to open the game. There was chances, of course. Buchanan had the chance early on. But Guatemala was still a threat in the game, Stevie. They still caused problems. They still had chances prior to the red card from Jacob Shaffelberg. So there's a lot of maybe, I was going to say soul searching. Maybe that's just too strong a term. But doubt. There's a lot for Jesse Marsch certainly to look at. Doubt, absolutely. Doubt in 1 or 2 of the players. I think that's fair to say. But there's a lot that Jesse Marsch has got to reflect on here and look back on this tournament as a whole, but particularly that Guatemala performance and result. Yeah,
I think you're reflecting yourself first and foremost. And I don't think it's been a great tournament for Jesse Marsch himself. I think having that suspension coming into the tournament for the first 2 games didn't help. A lot of the attention was on him and what he had done and missing on the sidelines. Of course, nobody cared after Honduras. It was such a convincing display. But Curacao, he was needed. And then it just created a hype throughout the tournament. We talked last week about CONCACAF v Jesse Marsch and how that was bubbling around there. I think it affected this team. And it might just show how fragile they are.
Did it affect Jesse,
mentally.
Do you think?
I think it did a little bit. I don't know if Jesse was at his best when he actually got to the touchline, maybe because of the suspension. But I think ultimately we saw how fragile this team are in terms of being ready for games. One of the objectives was to test the depth, and it was tested. And, 8 changes for the Curacao game, the second game. Too many, in my opinion. And I think it affected the rhythm. So you start to see, when you're resting players, how subtle a thing that is to get that right. It's very difficult to rest players enough that they're still feeling in rhythm, but they're feeling fresh as well. And I don't think Canada or Jesse Marsch got that balance right as well. And I think when you look at the roster and you look at the depth, we've found out that it's not as deep as we might have expected.
As certainly as I thought, I have to say, Stevie, I think that I mentioned it maybe a few times even to you privately, and certainly when we've been working on screen together, that they've maybe got up to 20, 22 players now at this stage, and there are a lot more questions I'd be asking around the players outside the 11. We know they've got a 12, 13, 14 perhaps. Outside that, those players that I thought were ready to seriously step in, I think they need to maybe go away and really watch that Guatemala game and have a look at their own performance and have a look at how they went through it and the small mistakes that were being made throughout. The minor detail, essentially, that costs you in the big games. Now, they're going to play against sides a hell of a lot better than Guatemala come next summer in the World Cup if they're to progress out of the group. So this is a learning curve, yes, but also maybe that one needs time to reflect a little bit and go, where are we as a team now, Stevie? That's what it is.
What are we missing?
Yeah, what are we missing? That's a great question. What are they missing then? Where are they?
Well, I think he has to question his formation. I think he's got to question, is 4-4-2 the right shape to play in World Cup games?
Yeah.
It's two strikers. Are you capable of playing two strikers and having success against some of the better nations? And I think when you look at the depth and the way some of the players have played, it's okay to do it in a friendly game or Canadian Shield tournament. But what we found from 106th place Guatemala was that when it comes to knockout football and it's live or die, teams find more. I think in a lot of ways, Canada, from maybe some of the understudies, didn't find the level of performance that was needed, Kev. They didn't find that up in intensity or that execution, that detail that you talk about, where you've just got to do your job. You just can't afford to make a mistake. You're at the highest level.
Stevie.
So the quality's not there. Yeah. It's the balance of the pressure and the quality, I think, was off a little bit. But we can't get away from the fact that Canada were likely, let's not say 100%, but likely to win this game if Jacob Shaffelberg hadn't done a really silly thing. First booking was silly.
Yeah.
Second booking was ridiculous, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He was.
And the more you watch that, Stevie, and when we were looking back at after the game, I always think that, sometimes you're watching it and you're seeing things from the sideline. You always think, what are you doing? Having been there in that position, I know myself in that position, you can always get yourself out. I think footballers or, professional athletes in general are quick to react to certain situations. And I think Jacob Shaffelberg can easily avoid that situation, can easily sidestep it, get out of the way. He kind of led with his elbow a little bit, turned his back a little bit. For me, it was a clear yellow. And given that he was on the yellow, there was... And again, I look back at it, Stevie, and I reflect, and I just think, I try and put myself in Shaffelberg's position because I played in that position, and I know what it's like sometimes. He had rough treatment. He had a poor tournament, Shaffelberg, very, very poor tournament.
He was targeted.
Yeah, and he won the penalty brilliantly against El Salvador when Jonathan David missed. And sometimes as a winger, you're going to get that. You're not going to have great times, and you might have to produce one moment, and he did that. So fair play to him in that moment. But overall, Stevie, his quality let him down. I don't think we saw the marauding, all-encompassing Jacob Shaffelberg that was continuously getting up and down the wing. I don't think we saw that. I think he got hit quite early against Curaçao, and that put him out of the game.
Yeah.
Fair play to the right back from Curaçao for doing that. And then that maybe affected his tournament because he never really got going. And I just felt with Jacob Shaffelberg, there was a little bit of edge to his game that I probably haven't seen before, Stevie. I don't know. You've worked with him, you know him.
Well, he's a fantastic young man. He's a guy who has exuberance in everything that he does. And when he's at his best, he's light and free. Did we see a light and free Jacob Shaffelberg?
No.
We saw a tense player.
Tense.
A guy on the edge.
Getting involved, Stevie.
Yeah.
Getting involved with everything. 3
or 4 times in previous games, he wanted to have, face-to-face with an opposition player. That's not Jacob Shaffelberg's game. His game is to be direct, to go every time, to ask a fullback to track him time after time after time in behind. And I think we saw a guy who was maybe within himself a little bit throughout the tournament, and it obviously boiled over in the quarter-final with a ridiculous decision where he was out there to sort of disturb, I wouldn't say hurt the centre-back, but disturb the centre-back. He moved his movement, he led with the elbow. The Guatemalan centre-back made a lot of it, of course, as you would, to try and win the game. And of course, it was that second yellow that cost him. And the whole game just flipped on that moment.
I just want to say, before we maybe talk around that and the game, the way it flipped, there's a couple of things maybe on Shaffelberg. We've constantly heard, and again, you know him personally, we've constantly heard the message, he's a great kid. He is constantly working hard. He wants to listen to what the coach is saying, and he'll go out and do it. He wants to simplify it, the message, what Jesse Marsch is giving. He likes a simple message and what he's doing. Do you think that of being the nice guy and this narrative around Canada of being the underdogs that they've been targeted from CONCACAF, do you think that's got into Shaffelberg a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm surmising a little bit, but just watching him, it looked like a total different character playing on the field. That's the way that I saw it.
I think you have to be yourself on a football field, on a training ground when it comes to the matches. I don't think you can manufacture any kind of personality.
Yeah.
So you have to be yourself. As an example, Richie Laryea is a spiky character.
Yeah.
He plays better when he's in these confrontations.
Totally agree.
He brings out more in his game. That's what he has to do. That's his game.
Yeah.
I don't think it's Jacob Shaffelberg's game. So I think he has to stay fully away from that and be who he is, be exuberant, go again, get up, brush himself off, go again. Because I think when he does that, he looks formidable in many ways. And if you're a fullback and you see Jacob Shaffelberg, he's a slight player, you want to come in hard, it's still there in the game, even though it's less than an hour day. And if you see a guy bounce up and say, a smile on his face, I'm going to go again, you think, I've got a long afternoon or a long evening here.
I
long
agree with that.
minutes.
I always used to find that with a better one. We'd always get hit by a fullback constantly. And you know, back in the day, it was the first one that was a given. It was a constant.
You got 2 or 3 for free.
And I always found that, you know, as I got older and I got more mature, I'd find ways to get that fullback back, certain ways in the game. But what I would try to do is get up, just go, just block it out as much as possible, fully focused on the game. And it didn't always work out that way. A majority of the time, it probably doesn't work out the way that you expect it to. But I would have always tried to remain myself. Be yourself, do what you need to do. If you get the opportunity to get them back, get them back. But subtle ways about doing it. That subtlety wasn't there with Jacob Shaffelberg. And I just wanted to ask on Shaffelberg. So good at Copa last year, Stevie. It was the real you know, it became the breakout star from the tournament, and it put us all into the reckoning. Why did TFC let him go over the way that they did? And we were starting to look at a lot of things around Shaffelberg's game. Is he one of those players then that's gone backwards now? And I know he's had a lot of injuries this season with his club and he hasn't been fit coming into the tournament, but he's not at that level, is he? He's nowhere near he was last season. So where does he find himself now in Jesse Marsch's plans ahead of next summer?
I think he's more effective off the bench. I think he's someone who can be effective when legs are tired and he comes on with a specific role. People know who he is now. That's maybe one of his issues through Copa America and his success.
And he's one-dimensional.
Yeah,
he's not
so
a player.
People are aware. He wants to get in behind you. You know, as a fullback, you prepare, you watch your video, you understand what he's trying to do in his game. And he's been easier to negate in these games and in the last few months. And I think that's because of the attention and the scrutiny. So he either has to become just too good at that, more consistent at that, and go multiple times, which I think is a part of his strength and a part of his game, or he has to adapt and he has to find more. But I think at the moment we see a player who's a little bit inside his head, and we saw an extreme reaction to that. Jacob Shaffelberg. I'm going to make a statement here. I bet he barely gets another red card in his career. He's not a red card player.
See, I think, was it Joe Del Bosso or Statman Joe? He told me at the weekend, I think he's had 2 yellow cards in a Canadian jersey prior to the game against Guatemala. And I think it was 6 in his entire career. 6 yellow cards in his entire career. So we know full well just by that stat alone, kind of he's not that type of player. But I will ask you, left side then, with that in mind, does Alphonso Davies now come back into the reckoning as a left winger? And maybe with Adekubi or Laryea behind him, you know, we'll see how Adekubi recovers. But it looks to me, we spoke about this so often, it just looks to me like the more viable option for Jesse Marsch and the better option for Jesse Marsch, as you say again with Shaffelberg, that player off the bench that can make an impact if necessary. I
think he has to, Kevin, doesn't he, Davies? He's got to move up. For me as a coach, your main objective is to get your best players in the team. So you try and figure out what your best 11 or 13 is, and you figure out a way, not being silly, you're not going to put a left back at right wing, but you try and figure out a way of fitting them in. So there's 2 reasons for me. Alphonso Davies is the best left winger in that squad.
Yes.
For sure.
And the best left back. He's the best, without doubt, yes.
So if you've got another left back who's very capable in that position, then you move Davies up. And the other left back for me, who's emerged throughout this tournament, who was the best player for Canada for me against Guatemala, is Richie Laryea.
I agree.
He played fantastic, especially with the 10 men. His ability to defend 1v1, his pace, his athleticism, his ability to dribble out of pressure, take it up the field, win a free kick. He's the expert at that. He's the best in the world at that. To win a free kick, to take the pressure off other players, take the pressure off the team, give everyone a rest, was outstanding. So I'm looking at that. I'm trying to put myself in Jesse Marsch's mind. I'm saying I have to get Laryea in the team. You know,
yes.
so
he's
how
not
am I
going to play
getting
right
on the
back.
team?
He's not going to play ahead of Johnson.
No.
And I agree with that. And I think he started to develop. I look at fullbacks that have done that type of switch in the career. Someone who I know very well would have been Dennis Irwin. Now, he's not Dennis Irwin, don't get me wrong, but Dennis adapted so well to going over to that left-back role after the emergence of Gary Neville at Man United. And then, you know, I played in front of him quite a lot for Ireland during my early stages in the international setup. Dennis was so good at how he manufactured or you know, handled the game with how everything was in front of him. And you can probably see a few similarities with how he's adapted. I don't think at first he really liked playing there. You could see every time he got out on his left foot, he didn't want to use it. He'd check back onto his right. 99 times out of 100. Now he's becoming a little bit more comfortable on his left side. He's using his left foot to pass forward. He's dribbling, as you say, out of tight spaces. And I see him now, and again, going back to what you say there after the Guatemala game, I think he showed me a little bit more of he's your guy in a knockout stage. In a knockout stage, I think you've got to play Richie Laryea. Without a doubt, if he's fit, he has to play. So he has to play left back.
He rose to the occasion, didn't he?
At left back, he has to play because Alistair Johnson is going to start there. There's only one role for Alphonso Davies.
And I think he's very capable of coming inside and playing inverted as well. If you want to leave the whole flank for Davies, draw a team narrow and allow Davies that whole flank to play almost like a wing back in many ways if you're playing him higher up. So for me, when I'm looking at the team, I'm starting to see that combination on the left-hand side. Mainly because, as we spoke about, Shaffelberg's issues, Ahmed's injury, we start to see maybe a lack of depth in the wide player and a lack of consistency in the wide player.
I think if Ali Ahmed was fit, he probably would have started the game. He probably would have been in the side, wouldn't he, as well? And even away from that left-hand side, we're going to continuously talk about this.
What about the experiment of Jebison in the wide area?
Jebison, honestly, Stevie, and I know that, you know, he's come in and you can see he's got ability. You know the ability's there, Stevie, but he's not been able to adjust to any position he's played, whether it's been through the middle. He doesn't look right. On the left-hand side, he didn't look like he was capable of playing there against Guatemala. They were hitting him on kickouts with Dane St. Clair. He wasn't able to win a header, given his stature. He looked absolutely lost. He didn't look the player that we've heard he is, the way that he's been training. So he's got a lot to do, Stevie. He really does have a lot to do. Jebison, a big disappointment for this tournament, given that he's come in wanting to make an impact. We spoke about whether it was going to be Jebison, Al-Uwaisi, or Promise David that was going to be taking Carl Laren's number 9 jersey. And that's still up in the air. So Jebison is an option on the left, yes. We'll talk a little bit around tactically Jesse Marsch and what he did after the sending off. I felt as though there was mistakes there. I'd love to be able to talk to Jesse and ask him that question about why he didn't change the system. But Jebison coming on for Tajan Buchanan, as you were calling the game, Stevie, you know, you saw that he was holding his hamstring towards the back end of that first half, wasn't he? So Tajan going off, who moved over to the left-hand side for the first 10 or 15 minutes of the second half. Jebison coming on just didn't perform, Steve. He didn't have any impact whatsoever the way that you would expect him to, given his talent and given the expectations that we've got on him. So there's a number of questions again around Jebison, and then I think we need to move to other positions as well, Stevie, in the middle of the park, and Soigneur and Sigur and centre halves. We'll look at Luc de Fougerolles and his emergence, Stevie. In this. Do you want to go to?
I'll say this, Kev, just to finish off on Jebison. His lack of experience is one thing, and we look at it and we say, well, you know, is he in rhythm? Is he playing at a high enough level, consistency, to expect to be effective at international level? And then the opposite of that is young Luc de Fougerolles, who's in a worse position. He plays less minutes. He's further away from Fulham's first team.
Doesn't play any minutes, Steve.
Doesn't play any minutes. He's only basically played for Canada in a League Cup game for Fulham. And yet, he looked like he'd played 100 games last night. He was outstanding, wasn't he?
No, I love it when you come to me straight away with these centre halves and you tell me, because I've got to say, you told me Luc de Fougerolles before he'd even played for Canada. You told me about him, this guy. I think he's got some in Kev, and I really think he could go on and develop and get better and better. And then I saw him the first couple of games and I was watching him, and I thought he looked a little bit like a U23 player. The lads that, you know, that on the ball, he just looked wrong. It's the wrong thing to say edgy, but there's a like... I don't know, edginess is probably the right word. Did a little bit of edginess on the ball, eager to impress. And then I've seen him now in the last 3 or 4 games where I've seen him become like, he's almost gone a little bit, you know, like if you look at the top class centre halves, Van Dijk or Maldini or whoever it would be, these sort of players. I've got to use the Maldini reference because I keep getting that one in my ear from Joe every time we talk about Diffusio. But he's gone, he seems to have calmed himself. His composure on the ball, the way that he passes the ball away from defenders, his thoughts in that, the way he is passing the ball, his dominance aerially, the way he's winning balls, the way he's reading the game. And Stevie, I can't speak highly enough of him now. And I know that you love him. I know that he's now your adopted son. But Stevie, how good?
Kevin, I met him when he was 16. So I saw him as a young man. I did something with him back in England, back in London, and I saw what a lovely young man he is, met his family. So I had that reference point. Never seen him play at that point.
Yeah.
And then
it's always a start, though.
Well, it's a great start.
It's a great start.
You see how a person handles himself and a bit of their personality, which goes a long way in this game, as you know better than me, playing in it so long and such a high level. And so it goes a long way. And so when I was coaching with Mauro Biello in the little interim period with Canada, the discussion came up, should we bring this guy in? So as we did our work and we found that Fulham just kept asking him to step up to another level, and seeing this lad puff his chest out, what I knew about him as a young man, you know, we made the decision, let's bring him into the squad to go to Japan. Yeah. First day training in Japan, youngest guy there. We put him in at fullback.
He would have been 17 then, would he have been?
Barely 17, I think. We put him in at fullback. He's playing against Alphonso Davies. And I think one of the first times Alphonso Davies just burns past them, we sort of look at each other and think,
he's
okay,
not ready.
You know, too early.
Yeah.
The next day, train much better. The next day, train much better. And that's when I thought to myself, this kid's got something. Yeah. This young man is going to learn consistently. He's going to improve. Next camp, even better. A little bit stronger, a little bit bigger. He's doing his work away from the football field. He's in the gym. He's eating right. He's living right. So what I see is a guy who's going to improve dramatically. Now, he's going to go get club football as high as he can to really push himself into Jesse Marsch's thinking to come on and play a number of minutes next summer, or maybe if he has such a meteoric rise, he could be starting next summer. Yeah,
I don't know where he's going to go. He's certainly the most impressive player, I think, throughout this tournament for Canada. There's been one or two, and I know that you mentioned Richie Laryea and how he stepped up in the big game, and that shows me a certain sort of character. But throughout the whole tournament, Luke Diffusio, in everything that he did, suggests to me that he is ready. Now, I want to judge him after 25 league games, wherever that might be, whether he leaves England and goes abroad, whether he drops into the Championship. I think Championship, absolute minimum for him, the way that he's been performing here. It has to be a minimum, Stevie, because he is that good and he looks that good. A continental European side be better for him, more beneficial? I don't know. I don't know what advice he's got from Jesse Marsch and other people, but he has to get a move, Stevie. Yeah. He has to move now, go and play games. And I think, going by your comments there as well and looking at what I've seen, I think he knows how to adapt. And that is the main skill for any young player, that so many players can't adapt. You're one-dimensional, you play a certain way because it's what you've done your whole life coming into professional football. But he knows how to adapt. If he's playing against a 6'5" striker, he knows what to do. If he's playing against a quick guy, he knows what to do. You know, he seems to me like he's got everything. He looks like he's got the mentality, judging again from what you say. He's got the right people around him that's going to help him with the decision-making that he's going to have to take. And honestly, I think, personally, and again, it might be a big call, I would, right now, if you were going to start a World Cup game, my centre-half pairing will be Moise Bombito and Luke Diffusio. Wow. Because I think and I know that Derek Cornelius is playing at a better level, but he looks better in every single department than Derek Cornelius. And again, he's a young boy. He's way ahead of Kamal Miller now and Joel Waterman. That's not even a debate after the Guatemala game. Before the game, I would have taken your debate and I said, yeah, they've got more experience. They've played more league games. But after that Guatemala game now, he's blown those guys out of the water. So you can quite conceivably say he's third choice. He's the next guy. But
For sure.
he is absolutely pushing Derek Cornelius now to the limit.
It's really important that him and his representatives get the best move that they can and get him to a level that he's in a shop window, an international shop window, and maybe gets himself ready to go back to Fulham. But there's no doubt the lad rises to the challenge whenever it comes his way. Two other guys, I think, that rose to the challenge through this Gold Cup, Nico Segur and Nathan Saliba.
Yeah.
Let's start with Segur. Outstanding. Right back for me, outstanding.
Yeah.
Sort of established himself as a player that Jesse Marsch is really keen to get in the 11, really keen to get in the side.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, you then see as probably, assuming everybody's fit, the only place that he can get in the side for me is in the central midfield position.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, is he as good in centre midfield as he is at right back? And assuming Eustáquio is one of my locks, it stays a lock.
Yeah.
Is that a creative enough midfield if it's a 2 for Canada to go and win multiple World Cup games?
Yeah, I just go quickly on your lock with Eustáquio. There's no doubt Stevie Stefan Eustáquio has probably been the biggest miss this tournament for how he can control the game in the heat. Against Curacao, I don't think Canada would have played the same way. I don't think they'd have played the same way against El Salvador if Stefan Eustáquio plays. So biggest miss for them in this tournament probably out of anybody. Outside that, going to Segur. Now, I was trying to do an analysis on him. Was it El Salvador? I think it was, with him playing in the middle of the park. And the differences on playing fullback to midfield and body shape, how you're taking the ball, you're going to be under a lot more pressure. When you're playing at fullback and the game's in front of you,
easier.
It is easier.
Yeah.
It is easier. I've done it. I've done both roles, and it is easier. Now, against Guatemala, I thought he got caught out a few times with taking the ball in tight positions at Guatemala midfield that were right on top of him. Not playing quick enough. I think he's probably got the mentality or certainly the character that can recognise his faults from that game and change them.
Quick interruption. Do you see any gaps in his body position or the way he receives it? Is that an issue or is it just speed of play?
A couple of times the way he was receiving it. I always think when you're in midfield, and we probably need to do a big screen on this. I think it would be a great one for us to do down the line, Stevie, and what we do. When you're receiving the ball as a midfielder and you're taking the ball essentially when you're trying to angle your body a lot more forward towards the opposition goal, but you still got to have your body in a way that you're going to take the ball. So you're on the half angle, you're on the half turn. And I always feel taking the ball, say if I was receiving the ball from the left back, for instance, if anyone can try and picture this in their head, you're trying to receive the ball on your right foot across your body, and you're allowing the ball to come across your body so you can either play to the right wing, preferably striker. I want that ball played forward as soon as that ball comes into my feet, but it's got to be quick. You can't have 3 touches. It's essentially got to be right foot kill, first time passing to the striker. Alternatively, if I'm receiving the ball from the right back, I'm receiving it on my left foot to play him forward. And I'm just thinking about guys when I played in the middle of the park who would have been around me. Someone like Robbie Keane. Robbie Keane was like he was a nuisance, Stevie. The way that he used to scream at you to pass forward, pass forward, pass forward, pass forward. It was a constant message, and he'd wind you up. Robbie, shut up! Like you're trying to get yourself in the. But that's the demands that a top class striker wants to make. Now would put on you. Now, if you've got Jonathan David in the side, that is a necessity. On the side, you have to
get the ball to him as quick as possible,
quickly as you can. So, I thought against Guatemala, Stevie, I wouldn't say found out. That's not the term to use on it. But he was a little bit loose and slack in possession, a little bit slack with his first touch, not getting his first touch right, getting himself into the right position. So I felt his first touch was only going one way. It was going backwards.
Yeah.
And when you go backwards, we've analysed Declan Rice at Euros in the past when he used to do that, go back towards where the balls came from. It condenses the play. It allows the opposition to get back on top of you. You've no way out of it. But if you're taking the ball on the half turn, back foot forward, it opens up the whole game for you.
I think good centre mids at any period in a match have to be in control of it.
Yeah.
And what I would say about Segur in the midfield is he was satisfactory, he was steady.
Yeah.
But I thought at fullback he looked dominant at times. The whole performance was more dominant. So
yes, I agree with that.
It's hard in
I do
a
agree.
small subset.
I thought he did well against El Salvador.
Yeah.
I think he did do well against
He did well, Kev, but did he do enough?
Yeah.
Do you see him dominating a game?
No, I don't think Canada controlled the ball enough anyway in the middle of the park.
No.
Against Guatemala, Choigneux was awful, and I have to say that he was
4 or 5 passes.
He was really poor, Stevie. In possession, he was really poor. Now his energy levels that Jesse Marsch loves, yes, that's there for us all to see. It was there against El Salvador as well. That looked like, I think Christian Jack spoke about it before the game where he said it's the first time Jesse Marsch has used the same midfield pairing 2 games in the bounds. I think that was right. It was something like that. Certainly through the tournament it was anyway. So he's gone with Choigneux and Segur. Choigneux fell well short. And I think Saliba would sit there and go...
Disappointed.
Yeah, I think I maybe deserved the shot. And I think he came on against Guatemala and did okay as well.
I thought he did well. A couple of times he held the ball and showed his quality and his strength. The pairing of Choigneux and Segur.
No. It comes back to Eustáquio. Eustáquio, they need him, and I know he's at the Club World Cup, and I think it probably ultimately was the right decision not to bring him in because he has to have that break now ahead of next summer. He needs it.
Segur allows Eustáquio to roam a little bit, which I think naturally he wants to do.
Yeah.
He's been kind of pigeonholed into this 6, especially for Canada, and having to be disciplined, but it's never really been his natural game, Kev. I've worked with him a lot as well, as you know. And Eustáquio's natural game is to go and find the ball and try and dominate the tempo of the play. So maybe somebody as tactically as astute as Segur is a good partner for Eustáquio. I still have my doubts because I think they need a bit of creativity in there. And Saliba's shown that he's capable of that creativity. He's kind of got everything in his game, doesn't he? When he's in prime shape, I criticised him at the start of the season. I didn't think he was in the best physical shape, and so I think it affected his game. But he's now in great physical shape, prime condition. What can't he do? I sort of see a guy that can go get the ball off defenders, can be on the edge of the box, get a couple of goals in the 2 games, So... Yeah. He's showing that he's
like now, Steve.
Great moves. So he's got to go, doesn't he? He's got to go at the next level.
I agree.
He can't afford to go like Choigneux went to Zurich and be in and out. And even Koné, a disaster at club
we've not even mentioned his name. I can't believe we haven't even mentioned his name. I mean, it looked to me like the ideal scenario to bring him on in the game last night. You go down to 10 men. Personally, I would have.
Is he going to be Canada's big enigma? Is he going to be a guy that we're going to be sitting here, older men than we are at the moment, and in 10 years' time saying, why have we never seen the full potential of Ismaël Koné?
Honestly, Stevie, and I look at Ismaël Koné, and I think I've seen a lot of players like Ismaël Koné in my career. I think I've seen a lot of, at various levels, I'm talking about when I was starting out at Preston, in the old Division 3 as it was, League 2 now, and as I went through the leagues, I saw so much talent. And you would have seen so much talent coming through at Newcastle and every club that you've been at, Stevie.
It's not enough.
Talent isn't enough. It's actually probably 10% of your overall game. You mentioned the character before. Character, understanding of the game, professionalism off the field, how you actually getting yourself onto the field every single day in training, how you're performing. It means more than just your talent, way more than the talent, because when you're in the trenches, Ismaël Koné, the way his career will more than likely go is he probably won't play for a team that's going to be dominating the league.
No.
He's not going to play for a Manchester City, a PSG in France or whoever. He probably won't, but he may do, and good luck to him if he does, but that's probably unlikely to do that. So if you're going to play for a team, when you have to dig in at times, you're going to have to see games through, you're going to have to find ways to win the game, but also for Ismaël Koné, I think the most important thing, Stevie, find a way to stay in the team. And be a guy that your coach thinks in his head, I'm not going to take him off. Doesn't play 90 minutes, doesn't start and finish games, doesn't... And if he's not starting a game, he comes on. He might make a small impact. He might start the next game. Doesn't necessarily. Yeah. So there's a lot he's got to get right, and undoubted ability. We've marvelled at the things that he's done in some big games, but that consistency hasn't been there for him, Stevie.
I played with a guy at Birmingham called Ravel Morrison, who everyone will know, Manchester United talent. Sir Alex Ferguson talked about him as being the best academy prospect to come through Manchester United, which is some statement. And Rav was a lovely kid, but he would do things in training that you would hear, when a guy scores a goal in training, you hear that groan, like, what just happened?
Yeah.
It was so outstanding. It was like, wow. But he could never transfer it to a game consistently enough,
Yeah.
And he was unreliable. He was younger then, and he had a decent career, Rav, but at that time, he was not reliable enough to put him in there week in, week out. And there's elements of Ravel Morrison I see in Ismaël Koné. And another example I'll give you is a Cameroon international, Andre Bike, who was at Burnley with me.
Yeah, I remember him, yeah.
Andre he played centre back, he played centre midfield. He could run, he could head, he could pass. He had everything apart from a balanced mentality to be reliable and be consistent. And I used to have...
Yeah. If you're going to play for Burnley, and it's no respect to anything else, you're
lower in the Premier League.
You have to know your job week in, week out. And if you're told to sit in midfield, you have to sit in midfield.
Just be there. Do what you're told of you. And I used to have many discussions with my good mate, Wade Elliott. If only Andre could see this, if only Andre could... In one day, he just had enough of me. Stop. He's never going to have that.
Yeah.
That's an attribute in a professional football player that's essential.
Yeah.
That mentality, that composure, that... and I was going to say this earlier with Shaffelberg, fire in your heart, ice in your veins. You've got to have emotional control and balance the whole time. And Koné is a player that has not proved to us enough that he has emotional control and balance.
Yes.
And he's got a soul search. He's got to find that in his game. If he does not want to end his career thinking what if, he's got to find that really quickly.
And it's so early in his career, and it seems harsh, but he hasn't been able to replicate back-to-back games for Canada. Given his talent, we've constantly said, wow, this guy. You and I have both analysed him in Copa. We analysed him post-Copa. We saw some of these. Look, this is going to be the guy. It'll be him and Stefan Eustáquio that will move on. These guys are going to be certain starters at the World Cup. And now those doubts have emerged again. It emerged this season. De Zerbi, his coach at Marseille, said similar sorts of things that we see.
He quite frankly gave up on him early, didn't he? De Zerbi, and that is quite telling. I know De Zerbi's sometimes an erratic, and a wonderful coach, but an erratic coach, but he gave up on them quite early, which for me was a big red flag. So I again don't want to judge a young man. Potential-wise, he can get to the absolute top.
Yeah.
But he's got to realise it, and he's got to have a deep, hard look within himself and say, I want to make sure that I get to the maximum of that potential. And I think that the question mark's still there, and it'll probably remain for a while unless he can really secure consistency at club level.
You dropped him from your rest from your 11 in the rest of the roster, didn't you?
I did.
Rest of the so
I did, because I'm so uncertain. I know Jesse Marsch wants to get Segur in the team, and I'm so uncertain if Koné will even find the right club and play to even be in the reckoning.
Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, I'm going to say that the thing that I've kept away from this conversation, because I'm no closer to knowing the answer.
Where are you going to go here?
Who is the number 9 or 10? Who is the second
I've
striker?
got two for you. I've got the number 1 and the number 9, so both ends of the field.
Let's start at striker.
Yeah.
I'm no closer. I don't know if you are, but I'm miles away. Lauren didn't have a good tournament.
I was pushing for Promise David in my own head. I'm not pushing anywhere, but I'm thinking Promise David has got attributes that I feel as though can get. We spoke about this last week, didn't we? But I'm uncertain again about Promise David, because I know that he's got there's certain parts to his game that he has got to improve dramatically.
Yeah.
He looks like he's going to score every time he's on the field. He missed big chances against El Salvador, I know that, but he looks to me like he's going to score. And now Taniel Ueshe has so much to admire about his game.
He had the strongest addition, Kev. He got the most opportunity.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
He got the most opportunity. He seems to be in the number 1 position now for Jesse Marsch. It seems to be like he's going to be the guy if it is not going to be Carl Larin. It looks like. But to me, Stevie, it doesn't look like he's if he gets a chance, you're never fully confident that he's going to deliver, he's going to score. And Canada, again, it comes down to a knockout game like the Guatemala game, and you might get one chance in a big game, and you have to take it. You have to take it, and it might be something that might hold him back, and it might be something. And Jebison, who we spoke about, he might be moved over to the left-hand side now. It might be a different position for him, but he doesn't look that guy.
No.
So it comes back to Caldwell Laren again, Stevie. And Caldwell Laren, given the level that he's consistently played at over the last few years, day in, day out, in training, with the calibre of players that's been around him, you can't look beyond him. But he hasn't had a start in the whole tournament, not one start, Stevie.
No.
So it looks to me like Jesse Marsch is still not convinced of who he's going to be that guy either.
Yeah, I would say Oliver Shea, the jury's still out on him. He had a big header, did quite well. He's backpedaling.
Yeah.
Maybe still should have scored.
Maybe.
At the highest level.
Maybe.
Right? And
yes.
he won the penalty. Dodgy penalty. It was never a penalty.
I don't
but
think it's a pen, no.
He won the penalty. So he might say, well, you know, I did okay in the game, but I didn't see enough. And I didn't see enough in the little details. We keep getting back to the little details because at the highest level,
well, if you look at the
most
penalty,
important thing,
look at the penalty. There was a chance.
his
for him.
touch was
It was
poor.
a nice ball from Richard Laryea.
Yeah.
You're on your left foot like you did against Honduras. You just you get your shot off. Had the touch, took it away from goal. Poor touch, as you say, and he ended up winning the penalty. And it was fortunate for him that he did.
Well, I got to get back to formation because when I look at the lack of consistency with any of these strikers, and I think about the midfield battle and hoping that Saliba does well and Koné maybe finds his best form, Eustáquio, Segur, is there an argument? Will Jesse Marsch be thinking, and he's very rarely did this in his career, does he go to a three-man midfield, two wide guys, and David as a 9?
Well, I honestly think, Stevie, when you're playing, if you're going to play against a knockout game against Argentina, Germany, France, Italy, whoever, England, you can get overrun in international games in the middle of the park, and I go back to maybe some of the games that I would have played at international level, and I was a left-sider, but seeing the guys in the middle playing against Italy with Pirlo in the middle of the park controlling the game, and he's got two runners alongside him, and they ended up just dictating play, and you get lulled into a sense that I'm okay here because they're keeping the ball in front of me, and then Pirlo will just stick one over the top, and somebody's in at goal. This is the learning curve that they'll have to face. But when they're playing against a different side that's going to have most sides have three-man midfield now with 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, and you can see Jesse Marsch has tried to adapt that 4-4-2 system. It becomes like a 4-2-3-1, but Johnny David is not a midfield player. So
plus the yards he's got to do.
Yes.
We saw him get exhausted. I know it was 10 men. The yards he's got to do to come back to that holding midfielder, and at the higher level, how good that player's going to be.
Yeah,
I think it's too much to ask.
Yeah, I know. In the group stages, come World Cup time, it might be enough. Be enough to get you out of the group. Yeah. But in a key moment, in a key game, has there got to be an adaptation? I'd probably say yeah. And again, it comes back to Ismaël Koné could play that 10 role where he's got the natural mindset to drop back in a 3 that's going to have to become a 3 at times.
Drift between
and you could have
a flat 3 or a higher up.
Yeah, but looking at the side and how a lot of the games outside Honduras, there was a bit of a lack of control in the middle of the park. If I'm thinking Curacao, there was.
There's very little control.
No,
in any of the last 3 games.
Guatemala especially.
Very little control.
It was a great game, Guatemala. And I think Guatemala, and you were on the call, and you comment on that towards half time. This has been a great game to watch.
Yeah, it's enjoyable.
Did you want it to be a great game? Did you want Canada to control the game, get the goal, 2 or 3-0, do the job, get out of it? And it wasn't like that. That's probably why Shaffelberg was sent off, because the game was so erratic and it was open like that. So that's something that I feel that can be improved on, definitely. And that's obviously comes back to Eustáquio.
Last topic is goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Dane Sinclair is number 1. Is that justified?
I'm still, honestly, I'm still 50-50. Is it 11-10 now, I think? 11 starts.
Just more.
11 starts, Crepeau 10. Personally, and I'll say it again, I prefer Crepeau. I just don't... I hate using the word that I'm about to use now, but do I fully trust Dane Sinclair? And ultimately, I'm asking myself that, and I don't, Stevie. Maybe I'm slightly harsh. I felt as though he could have done better on the goal that Guatemala scored. It was in the middle of the goal. Maybe he looked a little bit erratic with his feet as the cross was coming in. And again, goalies always slam you down. They always tell you that you're no goalkeeper, you don't know a thing about it. There was a lot of pace on the header, yes, and I'll take that. But I felt he should have saved it.
Yeah.
Personally, I felt he should have saved it. And Canada, when they get to, again, the knockout stages of a big tournament, you're big players, and your big player invariably has to be your goalkeeper,
Yeah,
has
make a
got to
save.
come up big, and he's got to make a save.
Yeah.
And he didn't have an awful lot to do. He made a good save in the first half down. It was actually a very good save. I can't remember, the striker got across the near post. Good save.
Yeah,
But
Santis.
when you're under pressure, the way that the game was going, Canada down to 10 men, I felt as though that was the ideal chance. Make your big save and just get on with the game. You don't need to be pumping fists or anything like that. Make your save, get on with the game. And I don't know if I've seen those big moments from him yet, Stevie. Personally, I think Crepeau deserved to be the number one off the back of Copa America. And very rarely do you see a goalkeeper or a player in general excelling so well and playing so well the way that he did at Copa and be dropped only a few months later. Now, I know mitigating circumstances, club form and things like this. But usually, I'm going back to Mick McCarthy's days, and one of our most famous games ever was playing against the Dutch at home. And we beat them 1-0. We were down to 10 men. Jason McAteer scores the goal. And Jason McAteer was out of form with his club, hadn't been playing regularly that season. But Mick says, "You're my man." Trusted him because of the job that he'd done in the past.
Yeah.
And he went with Jason and came up big on the day. And I always think of that when I'm thinking about players that get dropped for the club form.
Yeah.
Because I always think of managers that you've got that trust in the player, you know?
Well, I can't remember Max Crepeau making a mistake for Canada. He's made a few at club level, we got to be honest.
Yeah.
But I can't remember him making a mistake for Canada, and so he'll probably feel like at international level he's been a little hard done by. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in Jesse Marsch's mind about both these guys. I think he feels like the qualities, while they're probably different in some ways, they're at a level where not one of them's kind of rising above the other, but maybe making a decision might be the best thing for Jesse Marsch, because I still think there's an anxiety. It might just be Dane St Clair's personality, but there's a sort of an erraticness and an anxiety to his play. Maybe by saying he is my number one.
He got away with the one against El Salvador, the offside. He come out,
missed it totally.
And again, we're looking at these are such fine detail.
Yeah.
It's fine detail at this level. At this level, it's fine detail.
I don't think he could have saved the header, personally.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great header and it was past him before he could move. We could question his footwork. We're not experts in goalkeeping, but we could question his footwork. Was he set? Was he in a position to move?
I always judge it, Stevie. I always judge it when I look at goalkeepers, and I believe I played with some of the best.
You did.
Club level, I had Nigel Martin, England goalkeeper, outstanding in everything. Amazing hands, soft hands. The way that and Nigel would stay out on the training field for hours on end, every single day, working on his game. You know, whether it be shooting drills with the guys or whether it be his own individual stuff with Chris Woods, who was our goalkeeper coach. Outstanding goalkeeper. And the best that I played with, who you played alongside, would have been Shea Given. Honestly, it was if we scored against him in training, it was a thing. It was like it's like you've won the World Cup or something. Because he was that good of a shot stopper, and that was Shea's biggest strength. Maybe there was other things that maybe people would question in his game, but his shot stopping was, I believe, probably as good as anything in the Premier League at that time. Probably the best shot stopper in the Premier League at that time, and he had that. Yeah. And I think, if I'm looking at Dane St Clair and I'm thinking just specifically of those two goalkeepers, I think they both save that. Personally, I think they both save it. Yeah,
I think both the goalkeepers were unbelievable, though, at a high level. The best way I can describe it is a centre-back, when you've got a goalkeeper the standard of Shea Given, Alan McGregor, some of the guys, Julio Cesar, that I played in front of. There's this presence behind you. It's almost like a warm feeling of their voice and their presence that they've got you. It's under control. You can hear them talking all the time. They're helping you. They're there to rescue you if it's a difficult ball to deal with in the air, especially. And so you want your goalkeeper to have that, radiate that confidence, let's call it, about them. And neither of these guys are doing that at the minute. No. I think maybe it's harsh. We're talking about, Nigel Martin and Shea Given and Julio Cesar. We're talking about generational type keepers in the domestic leagues.
I totally agree, Stevie, with what you're saying, and it is harsh sometimes in your assessment. But we're going to be talking about Canada playing in a World Cup next summer. hopefully, and we've all got high expectations that they're going to get out the group. We expect them to get out the group the way that they've been playing. And it's going to be key games in the knockout stages. So Canada in the last 32 of next summer's World Cup against a team that probably more than likely going to be expected to beat. Depends on other groups and things like that. It might not work out that way. But we expect them to be in a position where they're going to advance to a last 16.
They'll be a favourite in a game, won't they?
Probably. And more than likely. And these are big things. They're big moments in games.
Big years ahead for both the guys in terms of the work they do at club level and away from the cameras, let's say.
Yes, exactly.
Good chat in Canada. We could go in
there
for a bit
I know. I don't know how long we've gone on there.
I want to get to some questions. All right, you can ask me the first one. We've got a bit of paper here.
We've gone a little bit different this week, Stevie. Bit different. We've been given these questions. They're saying they're not our questions. We have to state that one now straight away.
Not our statements.
Not our statements. More to the point. But we're going to go true or false on these, Stevie. So true or false answer, right?
Okay.
Pochettino will leave the US team before the World Cup. True or false? What do you think about that one? Because, Stevie, rumoured to have been in talks for the vacant Brentford job before my old mate Keith Andrews, former international teammate of mine, has taken the job. Pochettino was supposedly interviewed for the job, and he's been forced to deny it. We have to say that. We have to state that. Been forced to deny it. There was absolutely no talks from what he said, but apparently he was in talks with Brentford for the job. So will he still be in position next summer to lead the US at the World Cup?
False. He will leave the US.
Leave?
No, sorry. The question. You got to get your question right. Pochettino will leave the US team before the World Cup. I'm saying false.
False, yeah. Okay.
He will be there in the summer to be their coach. Only just.
Yeah.
Only just. This has been a disastrous reign so far for Pochettino. Arguing with the stars, poor results, living in London.
Yeah.
We saw him at the Nations League. Didn't look like he wanted to even be there. Not the body language we expect from Pochettino.
Beat Costa Rica on penalties.
Right, so rumoured to be putting his name out and about there for jobs that he might like, probably back in England. Only just because I think that...
I don't think he can leave, Stevie.
He can't. He's got to see it out, hasn't he?
He has to. It's such a big remit, that job anyway. Head of the World Cup, host nation... I mean, they're expected to win it. We addressed this last week. And Poch cannot leave, Stevie. I can't see it.
So, scenario, if a job does come up, if Marco Silva leaves Fulham, the Fulham job comes up,
Thomas
job
Frank
in
leaves
London,
Tottenham back to Spurs, whatever.
He's going, isn't he?
Well, the only thing I would say is, could he have had the Tottenham job? Because he's spoken openly about his relationship with Daniel Levy. Daniel Levy at Spurs. So if he was going to leave, he probably would have taken the Tottenham job over Brentford. Would you not have thought that?
I think definitely. And I think if he could have got that job, he would be there.
So that suggests
right now.
to me
So I don't know if it was there.
Yeah. So I maybe whatever. If you're saying there what becomes available, say a big, because he's obviously he's been at PSG. So if a big job becomes available, it's unlikely someone like Xabi Alonso he's going to be given a bit of time at Real Madrid. But if a job of that size, an Inter Milan, an AC Milan, a Juventus,
is his reputation still there? Because he's not been good for the US, Kev. Is that enough to judge him, or do you go back to previous years in Europe?
I think that's where the judgment will be. He's taken Tottenham to a Champions League final, and he has done good jobs wherever he's been. But ultimately, you have to say that the job that he's done. He hasn't looked the old Pochettino that we saw. He doesn't look like he's got that little bit of exuberance around him, that fire in his belly that we spoke about as well. Doesn't look like he has it in this job.
I think the best thing that Pochettino's done in his managerial career is connect with players, get the best out of players, and understand what
Harry Kane,
the club,
Dele Alli, players like this at Spurs.
But even back to Southampton days, he got the club, he got the players, made them better. Same at Spurs. Even in some of the lesser known or not as heralded European jobs, I felt like he still did a good job. US has been a disaster, so he's got to get that right. He's got to understand what makes these players tick, get the best out of them, and try and get a performance moving into next summer.
Big year.
Okay, I got one for you.
Okay.
Not my statement again here. I got to be clear. This is the great Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah.
The Club World Cup is the worst idea ever. Jurgen Klopp said that just a day or two ago. True or false?
Yeah. Right. 95% of the footballing world would say that is a true statement, but the ones that's in it will say no because of the amount of money it's been generated for them. We know with financial fair play and what's gone on in the last few years, teams like Barcelona that have struggled to meet the demands or meet the rules essentially. So, you know, a team like Barcelona will be looking with envy at Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid, thinking we could be.
If they go and win it, they got another 100 to 150 million in their coffers.
Incredible money. Look at Chelsea. And I was reading prior to Chelsea's last game when they beat Benfica, their fee now, the money that they've earned from the Club World Cup, has paid for Liam Delap's transfer fee and more. I think it was 25 million. They've paid for that and more. So it pays for huge wage bills now that the clubs have as well. It is there for them. But I haven't really enjoyed it. As much as I've watched a few of the games, and I've really liked watching the South American sides because it seems to mean a lot more to the South American sides that have been playing in it. The European sides now are coming too a little bit, Stevie. But it just seems a little bit. I'm more of a traditionalist. I'm a World Cup man going back, and I understand the way that you've got to change with the world. You've got to change with everything that goes with that as well. But I think it is a bad idea, Stevie. Personally, I do think it's a bad idea for a number of reasons.
Worst idea ever? True or false?
No, it's not the worst idea. It's not the worst idea ever because I think we would have all loved to have seen something similar. If it could have been done to maybe incorporate more sides, give sides a chance to qualify for it in certain ways. I don't know, but I think that would have been the ideal scenario, I think, for FIFA here. But it's, you know, lack of ticket sales. That's something that's going to come back. The money that they're throwing at the World Cup and the rest of the world that's maybe struggling. And again, there's so many families that are struggling across the world now. And we look at it from an economic point of view. And
let's
face throwing a lot of money at it.
Kev, the discontent would be unanimous if the prize money was not in this tournament. The players would be moaning for fun. The clubs would be saying, why are we being sent across the Atlantic to go play football for the European clubs? It would just be the managers are already moaning about. Well, he's complaining about the weather.
The weather,
and it's a big issue. A lot of these stadiums.
World Cup next year, Stevie.
It's a big worry, Kev. Can you imagine a World Cup final being delayed for a couple of hours because of lightning strikes?
Yeah, I know.
It'll be unprecedented.
Yes, I know.
It'll be a disaster for the tournament. And as we know, the final's in MetLife Stadium, and there's a good chance, well, it's a high chance, but a good chance that there's a lightning strike in that open stadium. It's delayed.
Yeah, we genuinely hope that wouldn't happen at a World Cup, but it's highly likely it's going to happen somewhere in a big game, a semi-final, a quarter-final, a knockout stage game, anything like that, or a group game that's got a lot riding on it. We're going to have this. You and I have covered a lot of MLS games where it's happened to us, and we've covered where you.
It's a horrible feeling, Kev. You're either in the stadium, you're calling the game, you're waiting. Like, we know that as football players, timing is everything.
Yes.
So you're trying to, you see a kick-off time, and you try to rest and get your body moving, eat, and build yourself up for precise timings to be ready for 3 p.m. on a Saturday or 7:45 on a Wednesday, whatever the time of the game is. And when that happens, it just knocks you right off. And as a broadcaster, it's the same thing. You got to be ready for the right time. So there's so many points here that come into this that make a weather delay disastrous. Last one I'll make is the last group games in a World Cup start at the same time. And pretty much, can you imagine?
I never thought of that one.
Two teams are going for a place in the knockout.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
one game's in Miami,
gets a weather delay,
one's in
and one doesn't.
North Carolina, I don't know, wherever they.
And there's another 2-hour delay, and so you know exactly what result you need.
Yes.
And can you imagine that needs to be a draw, a tie?
Are they going to stop both games together? They can't do that.
There's a lot of issues that need to be talked about, and the Club World Cup might have saved them by bringing this up, but I don't know what they're going to do about Mother Nature. There's nothing you can do about the weather, and they're not going to start changing around stadiums and make more of the stadiums indoor. I
never
don't
thought
think
of that
so.
one, Stevie. Great point. I say you've got some brain on you. I've always said that. I tell you. That's a great one. Right, last one. Now, this is a big one, and it's a contentious one. This one, but it comes down to there has been reports. Right, true or false? Agents' fees are costing Jonathan David his move to a bigger club.
Oh.
So again, we need to stress this. This has been reported that Jonathan David's agent is asking for big money.
Yeah.
Wherever he's going to be going to. I would actually love to have that conversation with him and ask him that question as well to see, what the story is. Why has Jonathan David not moved somewhere, given, his standing in world football and everything that goes with that, and his position right now and his contract situation? You would have thought this could have been done probably January. You would have thought there'd have been a pre-contract signed somewhere. So
I honestly thought in the last few months that there was a pre-contract, and they were, out of respect for his time at Lille and his status there, they were just waiting until a week or so after the season and it would be announced. But it appears that there is an issue. To answer the question, and I'm going to add some context, I think true. And I'll tell you why. And it's not necessarily a huge slur on just Jonathan David's agent, but any agent's job is to make money, of course. Do the best for the player and make money.
Yeah.
When a player is on a free contract, it's a big payday for the player and also
the agent,
a big payday for the agent. The first one I remember, Kev, was Harry Kewell when he went on a free and the agent was getting, I think, 2 or 4 million at the time. It was a lot of money at the time, and we were like, wow.
Yeah.
We were shocked, weren't we? And so I think it's true. I think what he's asking for is a lot, but I think there's more to it than just... I don't think a club's desperate for Jonathan David and they're saying no because of this agent's fee. I think there's probably 2 or 3 things. Where does he fit? Is he a consistent starter? Maybe what wages he's asking for as well might be too high and affect the wage structure, which we talked about last week. But I definitely think that these agent fees are getting out of control. There's a lot of money in the game and it's been dispersed in different places. But if the numbers are true that are being talked about here, it's astronomical.
Yeah, and the amount of money you touched on there that's sloshing around the game that is going to be there for an agent to discuss. An agent can go into a room now and say, first off the bat, it doesn't even need to be discussion about the player. First off the bat, for me to sit down, that is to get me or to get him through this door here, that's the fee. That's what you need to produce for me to get Jonathan David into the room to talk about contract. Yes or no? No, we move on.
Yeah.
So that's an easy conversation to have, and that's definitely happening. As you say, you go back to the cool days. My agent, when I was a player with Paul Stretford, who became Rooney's Wayne's agent, and Paul...
Did you help broker that for Paul?
No. It was he actually just before I signed for Everton. Before I signed for Everton. But he also had Alan Stubbs, who was, I think Stubbsy would have helped broker that one for Paul. But Paul was very good to me. I moved from Preston to West Bromwich Albion and from West Bromwich Albion to Sunderland, and everything that he did, I always feel as though Paul was in it with me. I always felt that with him, and as much as I'm sure those conversations would have been had at the club. This an agent's fee is an agent's fee. That's the way it would be. And a lot of the time, maybe back those days as well, and to an extent it is still now, where the club is negotiating on behalf of the club with the agent. So that agent's fee is then automatically between the two, and it's a separate issue.
Yeah.
These sort of things are how complicated with a player signing for a club actually becomes. The agent fee needs to be agreed. Whether or not it's the player that's going to pay that agent's fee.
Yeah.
In North America, it's not the same because the player themselves have the responsibility to pay the agent.
Pay the agent. It's part of the overall deal. I never paid an agent's fee in my life.
That's the thing.
My whole career.
And after I was at Everton, I actually moved to Wigan. Paul actually moved me to Wigan, and then I did my own deals then.
Right.
I did my own deal to Hull. I did my own deal to Coventry when I ended up going there at the end of my Coventry time, at the end of my Hull time, sorry. So all my deals were done on my own. I felt it was easy to do at that stage, to be honest with you. But I was very thankful for what Paul gave me in those early stages of my career that I would have needed.
The
experience of that.
I think there has to be honesty and clarity between the agent and the player to understand what's been asked for in that room, and then obviously a huge trust in that is what's being said. But ultimately, they should be working in tandem to get the best for each other.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't scupper a player's ambition.
Yes, I know.
And
it gets in the way. It can get in the way of it all.
So I think if you've got the player's best interest at heart, then you got to be mindful of that. And if Jonathan David's saying, I want to go to Juventus, or I want to go to Liverpool, I want to go to Barcelona, and I don't want anything to get in the way of that, my own wages or your fee, then there has to be a recognition there that I got to get him to that club if there's a possibility of that. So I know without really knowing the whole details, it's hard to speculate, but hopefully this whole saga gets sorted itself.
Quickly.
Jonathan David needs a club now. He needs a rest for sure. He was exhausted after Guatemala game. He needs a club to just get settled in and get down to doing what he does best, scoring goals.
Yeah, it's an interesting few weeks, I think, for Jonathan David to see what happens. I'd rather his club situation was sorted sooner rather than later. Let's get that done now, and then he can enjoy his rest a lot more, I think, if that contract is signed.
Good chat, mate.
Yeah,
we got through a few subjects this week.
a lot this week, yeah.
Pleasure as always.
Thank you.